everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
DanMachi, is it wrong for a mafia boss to go to the dungeon? Chapter 51 to 61. Chapter 51. God of Travelers, Hermes, 2087 words. Want to read ahead? Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations. Chapter 51. God of Travelers, Hermes. Hearing a familiar woman's voice, Suna and the others sprinted toward the source. They rushed toward the connecting passageway between the 17th and 18th floors. Yowa Aowa. And no one told me there were monsters that huge down here. Ahahahaha. I really thought I was going to die there. Standing there with an absolutely deathly pallor was Hestia, accompanied by a man dressed as a traveler with orange hair, sporting a strained, twitchy smile. Beside them stood an exhausted-looking woman with short aqua-blue hair, a masked elf carrying a wooden shurnai and two short swords, a large man wielding an axe, a petite girl holding a bow, and a long-haired girl carrying a katana. The moment Hestia spotted Belle, she broke into a dead sprint and launched herself at him. The impact sent Belle tumbling, crashing onto his back with his goddess pinned right on top of him. Belle. Is it really you? Gee, goddess. Hestia began running her hands all over Belle's body, patting him down frantically to confirm he was real. Being thoroughly groped by his goddess in front of everyone left Belle completely bewildered. Thank goodness. Realizing the boy in front of her was truly her beloved Familia member, Hestia hugged him fiercely, tears welling up in her eyes. Did she come all the way down here just because she was worried about Belle? As Suna realized the sheer lengths Hestia had gone to, he was struck by her incredible depth of action. Gods possessed absolute power, but the use of their divine arcanum was strictly forbidden in the lower world. Therefore, a god's physical combat ability was practically identical to that of an ordinary mortal without a fauna. Even if she had brought an escort, diving into the dungeon was an insane gamble. One wrong step, and she could be killed and forcibly repatriated to heaven, never to return to the lower world again. Understanding all of those risks, she had still come. That was how deeply she cared for her Familia. That is quite enough, Lady Hestia. Don't ruin our emotional reunion. Elle, let go of me. Unable to watch any longer, a deeply jealous Lily stepped in and forcibly peeled the clinging goddess off of Belle. Wait, is that? Looking closely at the masked elf, Suna realized it was none other than the stoic waitress from the Hostess of Fertility. And who are the others? Suna tilted his head, completely unfamiliar with the rest of the group. You bastards. Welf growled. You know them? Suna asked. They're the ones who hit us with the past parade, Welf spat, glaring daggers at the large man, the katana-wielding girl, and the petite archer. Shortly after, Hestia's group relocated to the Loki Familia's camp, where she explained how she had ended up on the 18th floor. When Belle and his party failed to return from their middle-floor expedition, Hestia immediately submitted a search request to the guild and frantically began gathering allies to mount a rescue. During her search, she visited the god Takamikazuchi to ask for assistance and explain the situation. It was then that she learned the three adventurers who had initiated the past parade were his children. According to their story, they had dumped the monsters onto Belle's party in a desperate bid to save their own critically injured comrade. However, upon realizing that their actions had likely pushed Belle's group to the brink of death, they were stricken with guilt. Determined to take responsibility and rescue the people they had doomed, they braved the dungeon all the way down to the 18th floor. Currently, Belle's party was sitting inside a tent with the Takamikazuchi Familia adventurers, engaged in a heavy, tense discussion. You're Ryo, right? While waiting for the discussion to end, Suna nervously approached the masked elf. Ryo remained silent, giving a single, stiff nod. I apologize, but could you refrain from calling me by that name, mister? It's a long story, but it would be highly inconvenient for me if other adventurers were to recognize my face. Suna didn't understand why she was so desperate to hide her identity, but he respected her wishes and agreed. More importantly, are you all right with this? Ryo asked. With what? You were a victim of their past parade as well, were you not? Even if they had their reasons, they still forced you into a life-threatening situation. Surely you must have a few choice words for them. And no, I'm fine, really. Anyway, who is that guy in the hat, and the woman with the blue hair? That is the god Hermes, the head of the Hermes Familia, who graciously offered his assistance for this rescue mission. The woman is Asphyal Andromeda, the captain of his Familia, and an acquaintance of mine. He's a god too. Upon hearing of your perilous situation, he personally issued a request for my assistance. Regardless, I am truly glad to see that you are safe. Now, we can only hope that the discussion in that tent resolves peacefully. Suna and Rio stood side by side, casting worried glances toward the tent, where the heavy negotiations were still taking place. How's the discussion looking? Hermes and Asphy strolled over to join them. And who might you be? Hermes asked, noticing Suna. We have successfully obtained permission from Braver to stay in their camp, Asphy reported to Rio, ignoring Hermes's question for a moment. We are at an impasse on our end, Rio replied. Well, considering what happened, I'm not surprised. Hermes mused. It looks like it's going to take a while, Asphy sighed. Realizing the situation was far from a simple fix, Hermes and Asphy turned their attention back to the boy standing next to the elf. And you are? I'm Sawada Tsunayoshi, a member of the Hestia Familia. Is that so? I'm Hermes, the patron god of the Hermes Familia. And this here is my captain, Asphy. I am Asphy Al Andromeda. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Asphy added, offering a polite and formal bow despite Hermes's casual introduction. More importantly, shouldn't you be in there participating in the discussion? Hermes asked, pointing a thumb at the tent. I'm not really good with heavy atmospheres like that. Why would you tell such a lie? I forgot gods can see right through lies. Remembering that divine beings possessed a flawless lie detection ability against mortals, Suna instantly regretted his poor excuse. What do you mean, Mr. Rio asked, narrowing her eyes. Are you hiding a guilty conscience? Hermes pressed, a sharp glint in his eye. And no, it's not that. It's just. I wasn't actually with Belle and the others when that happened. I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere else? Does that mean you had nothing to do with the incident at all? Rio asked. Pretty much. Wait a moment. Asphy interrupted, her eyes widening in realization. If that's true, then how exactly did you get down to the 18th floor? She makes a good point. Both Asphy and Rio had just connected the dots. If Tsuna wasn't traveling with Belle's party, and he hadn't come down with Hestia's rescue squad, how on earth did a relatively unknown rookie manage to reach the 18th floor? It was a perfectly logical suspicion. Could it be you've discovered another entrance to the dungeon aside from Babel? Hermes suggested, an audacious, probing smile creeping onto his face. Does something like that actually exist? He's not lying. I suppose I was overthinking it. Reading Tsuna's genuine bewilderment, Hermes instantly realized his theory was entirely off the mark. I can't tell you how I got down here, but I swear I haven't done anything wrong. Please believe me, Tsuna pleaded. Taking advantage of the god's lie-detecting nature, Tsuna explicitly stated his innocence to prove his hands were clean, hoping to shut down any further interrogation. It seems he's telling the truth, Hermes conceded, deciding to drop the matter. You heard the god. Shall we agree to cease any further probing into his circumstances? If a divine being vouches for him, then I have no objections, Rio nodded. If a god confirmed that Tsuna harbored no malicious intent, that was proof enough for her. However, I do have a favor to ask of you, Tsunayoshi, Hermes said, his tone turning serious. What is it? I need you to swear you won't breathe a word about Hestia, and me being in the dungeon. The guild strictly prohibits gods from entering the dungeon. If word gets out that we're down here, the guild will slap us with a monumental penalty. Seriously? Tsuna panicked. He had risked his life diving all the way down to the 59th floor just to earn enough money to save the Hestia Familia from poverty. If the guild found out and confiscated their hard-earned rewards as a penalty, all of his suffering would have been for absolutely nothing. But rest assured, Hermes smiled smoothly. No matter how guilty your actions may be, it's only a crime if you get caught. So just act completely natural. Skulking around and acting suspicious will only draw more attention to us. The way you're saying that makes it sound like you're hiding a lot of other guilty secrets. Suna muttered. Don't be ridiculous. What a fantastic sense of humor you have, Tsunayoshi. Ha 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 ha. He's completely panicking. He actually gulped out loud. Seeing the god sweat bullets and act wildly suspicious, Suna couldn't help but scream a retort in his mind. I thought Asfai-san was supposed to be the responsible one. Suna shifted his gaze to the blue-haired captain. From her appearance and demeanor, it was obvious she was an incredibly competent and disciplined person. The idea that she was complicit in a bunch of shady, unmentionable activities was genuinely surprising. Is something the matter? Asfai asked, noticing his stare. I just didn't expect someone like you to be involved in things you can't talk about. It is not as if I do these things because I want to. Asfai's shoulders slumped. It is entirely the fault of the irresponsible, self-proclaimed deity over there, who treats his familia like pack mules and drives his members to the brink of death from overwork. Did I step on a landmine? The previously dignified and composed Asfai suddenly morphed into an avatar of pure exhaustion. Seeing the life drain from her eyes, Suna deeply regretted his comment. Asfai. Isn't evil god going a bit too far? Hermes chuckled nervously. From my perspective, you are nothing short of an evil deity. I already haven't had a single day to rest, and then you suddenly tell me, I'm going down to the 18th floor, come with me. I already apologized for that. Breaking the guild's absolute taboo is bad enough, but living with the constant terror that one wrong step could result in our fauna being permanently sealed away, do you have any idea what that does to my stomach? Oh okay, I get it. I promise I'll give you a vacation as soon as we get back to the surface. You've said that countless times, and you have almost never actually given me one. I can't take it anymore. I'm so sick of this black-hearted familia. I'm going to see you one day. I'll listen to all your complaints later, just please don't air out our dirty laundry in the middle of another familia's camp. Asfai collapsed to her knees, burying her face in her hands as she finally unleashed all her pent-up frustration. Her desperate wails began to attract confused stares from the surrounding Loki Familia members. Fearing for his already dubious reputation, Hermes frantically tried to pacify his overworked captain. As you can see, Andromeda has a very difficult life. Rio whispered. She usually behaves in a manner that hides it, but in reality, she harbors a truly unfathomable amount of stress. I can clearly see that. Listening to Ria's explanation, Suna felt a profound wave of sympathy and a strange sense of kinship with the overworked blue-haired captain. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 52, Chapter 52, Limit Break 1132 words want to read ahead. Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 52, Limit Break Eventually, the tense discussion between the Hestia and Takamikazuchi familias reached a conclusion, and the two parties successfully reconciled. Looks like everything worked out, Suna said, approaching Hestia as she exited the tent. Just barely, Hestia sighed. The group that emerged from the tent still carried some lingering awkwardness, but the suffocating, murderous tension from before had dissipated. They had successfully avoided the worst-case scenario of harboring eternal bad blood. I know you just finished a grueling discussion, but do you have a minute? I have something to discuss with you, Suna asked quietly. What is it? I'd like to speak with you in private. I don't mind. Sensing from his tone that this wasn't something meant for other ears, Hestia nodded, and the two of them slipped back into the now empty tent. Before you begin, there's something I need to say, Tsunayoshi, Hestia said, crossing her arms. What is it? Thank you for coming back alive, just like you promised. Hestia. I know it probably looked like I was only worried about Bell and his group, but I was just as terrified for you, you know. Hestia knew better than anyone just how absurdly powerful Tsuna was. But knowing that he was plunging into the unimaginable nightmare of the 59th floor, there was no way a goddess wouldn't worry for her child. That's all I wanted to say. Now then, let's hear what's on your mind. It's about my status. Did something happen to your status? I awakened a skill, didn't I? Hestia flinched. She had kept his skills an absolute secret, fully intending to take that knowledge to the grave if necessary. The fact that Tsuna already knew left her completely shaken. I knew it. You've already awakened one. Seeing the sheer guilt on her face confirmed it. Realizing there was no point in hiding it any longer, Hestia confessed. Still, how in the world did you figure it out? Well, I was fighting, and I kind of just noticed it, I guess. Kind of just noticed it. Hestia stared at him in utter disbelief. The idea that a mortal could instinctively deduce the existence of a hidden fauna skill through sheer combat experience was simply unheard of. It lets me absorb magic and convert it into my own power, right? For the record, the skill is named 0 Point Breakthrough, revised. Tsuna frowned, a complicated swirl of emotions welling up inside him. He never expected his fauna to literally rip the name of his own signature technique and register it as a localized fantasy skill. If you figured that out, I suppose not even you could notice that one. Having decided to lay all her cards on the table, Hestia brought up the other major anomaly on his back, the blood of Vongala. I have a second skill. Well, normally it's impossible for an adventurer to notice any of their skills without checking their status, but still, what is it? This one actually manifested the moment I gave you your fauna. The skill is called Blood of Vongala. It's an ability that drastically accelerates your growth speed. Tsuna slumped. He didn't care about the details of the skill's mechanics. The fact that the word Vongala had followed him all the way to a parallel fantasy world made him want to bury his face in his hands. Both of these are unprecedented, ultra-rare skills. I knew that if the public caught wind of them, malicious people would try to use your power for their own ends. That's why I kept my mouth shut. Finn told me the exact same thing. He guessed my goddess probably hid it because it was too rare. Braver figured it out. Does that mean the Loki Familia kids know about your skills? No one knows about that one. Only a few of the Loki executives and Tsubaki from the Hephaestus Familia know about the magic-absorbing skill. But Finn promised me they'd keep it an absolute secret from anyone outside their inner circle. Knowing Findame's reputation as a man of his word, Hestia let out a sigh of relief. Also, Finn told me there's a way to lock a status so other people can't see it. Is that true? I was going to tell you as soon as I got back to the surface, but since you showed up here, I figured I should mention it now. I'm going to ask Hermes how to do it right now. Wait here. Terrified at the prospect of her precious child's overpowered stats being exposed to the world, Hestia bolted out of the tent in a frantic rush to interrogate Hermes for the locking method. 15 minutes later, she returned, completely out of breath. Tsunayoshi. I got the locking method from Hermes. Let's do it right now. We'll update your status while we're at it. Oh, okay. Overwhelmed by her sheer desperation, Tsuna quickly complied. He removed his shirt and lay face down on the cot. Hestia bit her finger, letting a single drop of divine blood fall onto his back to initiate the update and apply the newly learned lock. It's done. What's wrong, Hestia? The update and the lock had been completed successfully, but Hestia was staring down at the sheet of parchment in her hands with a hollow, dead-eyed expression. Tsuna tilted his head, wondering what had gone wrong. Your status, it's completely absurd. With trembling hands, Hestia read over the freshly printed status sheet once more. Status window name, Sawada Tsunayoshi strength, F350 SSS 1500 endurance, F300 SSS 1300 dexterity, G200 SSS 1200. Agility, F330 SSS 1600 magic, I0 blood of Vongala accelerates growth. Increases strength through combat. Effect increases against stronger opponents. 0-point breakthrough, revised absorbs an opponent's magic and converts it into own power. Cannot absorb magic mixed with impurities. Overabsorption causes self-inflicted damage. Try an Iset, can freely change flame attributes. Usable attributes, storm, rain, lightning, sun, cloud, mist. Changing attributes also changes the partner's attribute. Cannot use multiple attributes simultaneously. I knew he went all the way down to the 59th floor with the skills he had, so I tried to mentally prepare myself, but for every single basic ability besides magic to shatter the limit break, and for a brand new skill to manifest. I feel like I'm going to lose my mind. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 53, Chapter 53, Past. 1589 words want to read ahead. Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 53, Past. The day after his status was updated. It was noon. Eager to test his newly manifested skill, Suna wandered through the dense forest of the 18th floor, searching for an isolated spot. Eventually, he spotted a small clearing through the trees and headed toward it. This looks like a good spot, eh? Stepping into the clearing, Suna froze. He had thought it would be a perfect, empty space to train, but to his surprise, the ground was dotted with makeshift wooden crosses crafted from branches. Graves. Looking at the weathered crosses, Suna quickly deduced that this was a burial site. Suddenly, Mr. Ryu emerged from the trees behind him, her arms full of freshly picked flowers. Both of them blinked, surprised to run into each other in such an isolated location. "Why are you here?" Ryu asked. "I was looking for a quiet place to do a little training." "What about you, Ryu? What brings you out here?" "I came to visit these graves." "Does that mean?" "The people buried here are my former comrades. The members of my familia." Having explained the significance of the site, Ryu approached the graves and gently laid a single flower at the base of each wooden cross. Then, she pulled a small bottle of liquor from her pouch and poured it over the earth as an offering. Watching her solemn ritual, Suna stepped forward, crouched in front of the graves, closed his eyes, and pressed his palms together in prayer. "I didn't know this was a graveyard, but I still barged in uninvited, so I figured I should at least pay my respects. Even if the people resting here have no idea who I am. The sentiment alone is more than enough. Thank you." Seeing Suna offer a heartfelt prayer for comrades he had never even met, Ryu bowed her head in gratitude. "You mentioned before that you quit being an adventurer, but since you made it all the way down here, that means you still have your fauna, right?" Suna asked. "Though technically speaking, I am excommunicated." "Excommunicated?" "I once worked as an adventurer under Lady Istria, the goddess of justice and order." The Istria Familia. The Istria Familia. The Istria Familia didn't just explore the dungeon, we actively policed those who disrupted the city's order. During my time, Orario's public order was incomparably worse than it is today. There were countless factions that threatened the peace of the city. We fought every single day to protect Orario. Are you talking about the Dark Age? You know of it. 7 years ago, an organization called the Evolus was operating in the shadows, and there was a massive conflict that caused the highest number of casualties in Orario's history. They called it the 7 Days of Death, right? Suna recalled the grim history lesson Finn had given him during their rest on the 50th floor. That is exactly right. So you fought during the Dark Age too? I fought against the Evolus to protect this city. Then, are the people buried here from that battle? During the 7 days of death, my comrades did not die. As Rhea spoke, the image of a certain friend who had perished during the Dark Age flickered through her mind. 2 years after the 7 days of death, we were lured into a trap in the dungeon by the remnants of the Evolus. My comrades were slaughtered. I was the only survivor. After that, I arranged for my patron goddess, Lady Astrea, to escape the city. It was then that she handed down my excommunication. Yet, despite severing our ties, she did not erase my fauna. I imagine it was her final act of mercy. Afterward, I hunted them down. One by one, I completely eradicated the Evolus, along with anyone and any organization affiliated with them. Hearing the brutal aftermath of her tragedy, Suna gasped, a sudden realization striking him like lightning. During his conversation with Finn on the 50th floor, Suna had heard the tale of an adventurer known as Gale, who had single-handedly annihilated the Evolus. Connecting the dots, he realized that Rio was the legendary Avenger Finn had spoken of. Rio flinched, completely caught off guard that he knew her alias. To think you knew that much. I heard the story about an adventurer named Gale destroying the Evolus. I just didn't realize it was you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought it up. Considering you are involved with me, it was only a matter of time before you found out. You are not the only one who knows my past. Though momentarily shaken that her true identity had been laid bare, Rio quickly regained her composure and continued her story. After I annihilated the Evolus, the guild could no longer ignore my actions. I was officially placed on the wanted list. So that's why you said it'd be bad if other adventurers saw your face. Having completed my revenge, my body and soul were utterly broken. I collapsed in a back alley. Having lost the will to live, I chose to just lie there and wait for death. But it was then that Seer reached out her hand to me. Even knowing exactly who and what I was, she arranged for the owner of the Hostess of Fertility to take me in and let me work there. So that's how you ended up at the pub. But how have you managed to work there without getting caught? During my time as an adventurer, I always wore a mask. Therefore, as long as I do not use my surname, Lion, and keep my hair dyed, almost no one can recognize my true identity. The only reason I am able to live a normal life today is entirely because of Seer. I had no idea. Suna had always viewed Seer as sharp, calculating, and somewhat incredibly cunning. But learning that she was Ria's savior completely changed his perspective of the silver-haired girl. I apologize. I did not mean to burden you with such a foul story. Speaking of my past has only reaffirmed it for me. I am a shameless, barbaric elf. Therefore, Mr. Sawada, please do not ever make the same mistakes I did. You possess a truly kind heart. I know you will always choose the right path. Suna had offered a sincere prayer for the souls of people he didn't even know. Rio recognized that, just like Belle, Suna was fundamentally a good, pure-hearted person. I've already made the wrong choice, Suna said quietly. Excuse me. I've killed someone out of hatred, too. Ria's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. The idea that this gentle boy had taken a life was completely inconceivable to her. There was a guy who caused my comrades to die. I hated him for it. I let my anger consume me, and I blew him away so completely that nothing was left. In the battles of the future, Byakuran had shattered the order of the world. To restore the balance and allow Tsuna and his friends to return to their peaceful past, Uni and Gamma had been forced to sacrifice their own lives. Unlike the Evolus, Byakuran hadn't killed Uni and Gamma directly. But if Byakuran hadn't destroyed the world's order, they never would have had to sacrifice themselves. Indirect or not, Byakuran was their murderer. Because of him, countless innocent people died, and my friends had to lay down their lives just to give us a future. I honestly thought that defeating him was the right thing to do. But in the end, what I did was no different from what he did. What Byakuran had done was undeniably wrong. And because Byakuran was gone, innocent people would no longer be slaughtered. But even so, Suna believed that didn't give him the right to act as an executioner. That's why I'm telling you. I've already made a mistake. You fought to protect the people you loved. You did nothing wrong. The only one at fault is the monster who drove your comrades to their deaths. If that's true, then you didn't do anything wrong either, Ryo. The ones at fault are the Evolus who killed your friends. You're not the bad guy here. That is. Ryo had desperately tried to argue that Suna's actions were justified. But Suna had also taken the lives of those who had stolen his loved ones. For her to claim that Suna was innocent while maintaining that she herself was a sinner was entirely contradictory. Ryo was left completely speechless. I could never say that what I did was right, Suna said, looking down at his hands. But even so, my friends laid down their lives for our sake. So to ensure their resolve wasn't for nothing, I decided I was going to live. Ryo couldn't find the words to respond. The boy standing before her was younger than she had been during the Dark Age, yet it was blindingly obvious he had walked a path far bloodier and more harrowing than anything a normal person could comprehend. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 54, Chapter 54, Dinner 1537 words want to read ahead. Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 54, Dinner. Having shared the weight of their respective pasts, Ryo pointed Suna toward a secluded spot perfectly suited for his training. I think I've got the hang of this skill. Entering hyper-dying will mode, Suna had spent the afternoon testing his newly awakened skill, Try and I Set. Through trial and error, he had successfully grasped the mechanics and learned how to freely shift his flame attributes. The only problem is the mist flame. I just can't seem to use it right. While he could freely change his flame's attribute, he couldn't draw out the true potential of the mist flames. Out of all 7 sky attributes, mist flames possess the lowest sheer destructive power. However, their true strength lay in their unique characteristic, construction. Mist flames were used to create illusions and deceive the enemy's senses. A high-level illusionist could even create real illusions so dense they possessed physical mass. However, Suna wasn't an illusionist. He had absolutely no idea how to construct a convincing mental image and project it into reality, leaving him struggling to utilize the mist attribute effectively. If I asked Lily. Suna had already deduced with his hyper-intuition that Lily possessed a skill or magic that allowed her to change her physical appearance. He figured that if he asked her for advice, he might grasp the conceptual trick to weaving illusions. However, since they had a tacit agreement not to pry into each other's secrets, Suna ultimately decided against it. Night eventually fell over the 18th floor, and dinner time approached. I wonder if Ryo is still out there. Suna walked through the dense forest, carefully balancing 2 plates piled high with warm food. Since Ryo couldn't risk showing her face, she couldn't join the massive banquet back at camp. As a former adventurer, she was vastly more experienced than him and undoubtedly knew how to survive and forage on her own, but Suna couldn't shake the feeling that eating alone in the dark was a lonely experience. So he had set out to find her. She's probably over there. Guessing she would still be near the graves of the Astrea Familia, Suna altered his course and headed toward the burial site. At the graves of the Astrea Familia. Just as Suna had predicted, Ryo was standing watch near the graves. Catching the faint sound of footsteps and rustling leaves approaching her position, she instinctively reached for the hilt of her wooden sword, dropping into a combat stance. Found you. Seeing Suna casually push his way through the brush, Ryo blinked in surprise and slowly pulled her hand away from her hilt. Why are you here? I brought you some dinner. I figured you'd be lonely eating by yourself. You came all the way out here just for that. Oh, and don't worry, I didn't tell anyone I was coming to see you, so your secret's safe. He doesn't appear to be lying, and I don't sense anyone else in the vicinity. Ria subtly expanded her senses to sweep the area. Because she had revealed her status as a wanted fugitive, she had been momentarily paranoid that Suna had either led bounty hunters to her or had been trailed by someone looking to collect the bounty. "Was I bothering you?" Suna asked, noticing her tense posture. "Thank you for the meal." Ria wasn't cold-hearted enough to reject genuine kindness. She accepted the plate from Suna, and the two of them sat down to eat together. "By the way, how did your training go?" Rio asked between bites. "I think I've got a pretty good handle on it now." "A handle on it?" "After Hestia updated my status, I awakened a new skill. I was out here trying to figure out how to use it." "So that was it. But I still haven't fully mastered it. I'm just missing one last piece to make it click. I feel like if I could just ask an acquaintance of mine, they could give me the hint I need, but I don't know if they'd actually teach me." "That is quite a difficult position to be in." "Hey, you don't happen to know anyone who can use illusions, do you?" "I do know someone, actually." "Yes, and depending on the conditions, they might be willing to instruct you. However, as there is an unspoken rule against deep fraternization between different familias, I would strongly advise against seeking them out." "I forgot about that." Remembering the strict factional boundaries in Horario, Suna realized that asking someone from outside his familia, let alone asking Lily, was completely off the table. "Ah, right." Feeling dejected that his only avenue for learning illusions was shut down, a sudden thought crossed Suna's mind. "Speaking of which, you've known Seer for a long time, haven't you?" "What about it?" "I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about her. Could it be you harbor romantic feelings for her?" "It pains me to say this, but she already has someone she is destined to be with. I highly recommend you give up." "That's not it." "It's nothing like that." Realizing Rio had completely misunderstood his intentions, Suna furiously waved his hands, his face flushing bright red. "Then why do you wish to know more about her?" "I was just wondering who exactly she is." "What do you mean?" "It's just she doesn't feel like a normal person. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if she's even human at all. It is true that Seer possesses an aura unlike a normal human, but I assure you, she is a genuine human." "Is that so?" If Rio, who had known her for years, said so, then it had to be the truth. And yet, Suna still looked unconvinced, his hyper-intuition persistently ringing alarm bells in the back of his mind. "Regardless of her nature, Seer is an incredibly special person to me," Rio said softly. "Because she saved your life." "That is part of it. But above all else, she is special because she is someone who can touch me." "What do you mean?" "We elves possess great physical beauty, a fact we and others readily acknowledge. However, we are also an exceedingly proud and deeply fastidious race. We do not easily permit physical contact with other races." Rio elaborated that many elves looked down on other species, abhorred mingling with them, and chose to isolate themselves within their hidden forests. In her homeland, this elitist mindset was practically universal. However, I always thought differently. I believed that elves who harbored such arrogant thoughts were truly the ugliest creatures of all. Believing that, I fled my forest and came to Horario, hoping that in a city where countless races gathered, I would finally find what I was looking for. "What were you looking for?" "I wanted companions. People who respected each other's character, laughed together, and stood as equals regardless of their race. But when others reached out to touch me, I swatted their hands away time and time again. In doing so, I was violently forced to realize the truth. I was just as much of an elf as the people I had left behind. I had no idea. Yet, despite my nature, Seer reached out and touched me. And I found that I could accept her touch without a single feeling of rejection. She is one of the very few people in the world capable of doing so." "Are there others besides Seer?" "One was Elise Lovell, the former captain of the Astrea Familia who originally recruited me. The other is your Familia member, Mr. Through a coincidence, I discovered that I do not experience any form of rejection when he touches me. Before Tsuna had arrived in Orario, Belle had once lost his Hestia knife, and Rio had been the one to find it. When Belle grabbed her hands in gratitude, Rio had been shocked to realize she felt no instinctual urge to pull away. But that still means you can't touch anyone else in your familia, or your friends at the pub. Despite opening her heart to them, her biological instincts still barred her from physical contact. Learning about Rio's tragic disposition made Tsuna's chest ache with sympathy. Suddenly a massive, blinding flash of magic violently illuminated the dark sky from a distance. What was that? Someone just unleashed a high-tier spell. But why? I don't know. But I have a terrible feeling about this. Forged through years of brutal combat experience, Rio's instinct screamed that something disastrous had just occurred. Sawada, I am going to investigate. Please, return to the camp immediately. Not wanting to drag a supposedly inexperienced rookie into a potentially lethal situation, Rio ordered him to retreat, and prepared to sprint toward the blast zone alone. I'm going with you. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 55, Chapter 55, Remnants 1876 words want to read ahead. Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 55, Remnants An explosive surge of magic had suddenly detonated across the 18th floor. I'm going with you. A sharp, calm flame ignited upon Tsuna's forehead as he entered hyper-dying will mode. Seeing his entire demeanor shift from a timid boy to a hardened warrior in the blink of an eye, Rio's breath hitched in her throat. This presence, it's exactly like back then. Looking at the hyper-focused Tsuna, the image of a certain silver-haired adventurer she had fought alongside during the Dark Age flashed through Rio's mind. Could he truly be an adventurer of that caliber? But how could a rookie who just arrived in Orario possess such overwhelming power? Rio couldn't comprehend how the boy standing before her could exude an aura that rivaled the city's greatest veterans. Grab onto my leg, Rio. He's flying. Tsuna fired a burst of flames from his boots, launching himself into the air and hovering off the ground. Rio stared in absolute shock, never having imagined that a mortal could fly. As long as you grab over my clothes, it shouldn't trigger your rejection, right? Realizing his intent, Rio kicked off the ground, leaped into the air, and firmly grabbed Tsuna's left ankle with her left hand. Hold on tight. Using his flames for propulsion, Tsuna blasted through the sky, flying straight toward the epicenter of the magical explosion. Conscious of the passenger hanging from his leg, he carefully modulated his speed so the wind pressure wouldn't rip her grip away. Are those? Squinting against the wind, Tsuna's enhanced vision caught sight of the monsters rampaging at the source of the blast. They were man-eating flowers, the exact same species they had fought on the 59th floor. Looks like there's about 10 of them. But why are they up here? Knowing they were a deep-floor species, Tsuna felt a deep sense of wrongness seeing them on the 18th floor. I've never heard of plant-type monsters spawning on the 18th floor. It seems we're dealing with a new species, Rio analyzed, looking down at the chaos. Looks like your bad feeling was right on the money, Tsuna replied. More importantly, Rio, what level are you? Can you use wide area attack magic? Since Rio was an elf like Riveria and Mafia, Tsuna deduced she likely possessed powerful offensive magic. However, it requires a chant, which will take time. Start chanting now. If you start from up here, you'll be able to fire it the second we arrive. Even if I begin now, it is impossible to finish the chant before we reach them. That's fine. I'll stop them the moment we arrive. Understood. She had no idea how he planned to halt an entire horde of monsters simultaneously, but trusting the absolute confidence in his voice, Rio closed her eyes and began her incantation midair. Meanwhile, at the epicenter of the magical blast. What do I do at this rate? We're going to die. Mafia stood trembling in terror as 10 massive man-eating flowers loomed over her. Behind her lay Belle, completely unconscious. The chain of events leading to this disaster had started earlier that afternoon. Instigated by Hermes, Belle had accidentally stumbled upon Ace and the other female adventurers while they were bathing. After apologizing profusely, the women had forgiven him, largely because they knew Hermes was the true mastermind. Mafia, however, had absolutely refused to let it slide. She had chased Belle out of the camp and through the forest until both of them had hopelessly lost their way. Wandering through the woods, they had accidentally triggered a pitfall trap and tumbled into the lair of a rare, trap-type monster that melted its prey in a pool of acid. After a desperate, grueling battle, Mafia and Belle had expended every last drop of their magic to incinerate the beast. But the moment they dragged themselves out of the pit, 2 mysterious figures dressed entirely in white robes appeared. Without a word, the figures summoned a horde of man-eating flowers and commanded them to execute the exhausted adventurers. "I have to do something. This is all my fault to begin with." Mafia stood protectively in front of the unconscious Belle. She loathed the human boy, but she certainly didn't want him to die. She frantically racked her brain for a way to let him escape. However, her mind was completely depleted from the previous battle, and Belle couldn't even stand. The situation was hopeless, and the chilling specter of death loomed over her. Suddenly Natsu. Roar. A mighty, echoing roar shattered the tension, and a torrential downpour of brilliant blue flames crashed down from the sky, washing over the battlefield. The moment the azure flames touched them, the man-eating flowers' movements ground to a sluggish, agonizing crawl. Suna had swapped his sky flames for rain flames, causing his box weapon, Natsu, to change attributes in sync. Unleashing a wide-area roar infused with the rain flames' characteristic of tranquility, Natsu had effectively neutralized the kinetic energy of the monsters, slowing them to a near halt. "Now, Ryu. Cross the sky, race through the wilderness, and run faster than anyone. Harbor the light of stardust and smite mine enemy." Releasing her grip on Suna's leg, Ryu fell freely toward the earth, the final verse of her chant ringing out with crystalline clarity. Luminous wind. A massive barrage of emerald wind and radiant light spheres bombarded the immobilized man-eating flowers. Unable to dodge, the monsters were completely obliterated in a spectacular series of explosions. Using the blinding dust and smoke as cover, the 2 white-robed figures vanished into the forest. Ryo landed gracefully on the ground, followed shortly by Tsuna, who descended slowly on his flames before recalling Natsu back into his ring. "Are you two all right?" Tsuna asked, rushing over. "Thank you so much." Mafia stammered, collapsing to her knees in relief as Belle slowly began to regain consciousness beside her. "Tsuna. Miss Ryu." Belle groaned, holding his head. "His flame is a different color." Mafia noticed that the flame burning on Tsuna's forehead and the fiery mane on his small lion familiar had shifted from a vivid orange to a bright, piercing yellow. "They're both in terrible shape." Tsuna surveyed their injuries. Both Belle and Mafia were covered in severe bruises, and large patches of their skin were suffering from horrifying acid burns. Tsuna's yellow flame flared brighter. He gently placed his hands atop Belle and Mafia's heads. "Don't move." Flames ignited over his gloves, smoothly washing over the 2 injured adventurers. "What are you doing?" Ryo shouted. "My wounds are. They're healing." Instead of burning them, the yellow sun flames rapidly mended their torn flesh. The agonizing acid burns faded away, the bruised tissue repaired itself, and their skin returned to its flawless, original state. Watching fatal wounds completely vanish in seconds, Belle, Mafia, and Ryo were left completely utterly stunned. "I used my flames to stimulate and accelerate your body's natural cellular regeneration. You should be perfectly fine now," Tsuna explained calmly as the flame on his forehead shifted back to its standard orange hue. The yellow sun flames possessed the characteristic of activation. By supercharging a target's biology, Tsuna could force their bodies to heal grievous wounds in seconds or temporarily push their physical limits far beyond normal capacity. Miss Ace. Hearing the massive explosions, Ace burst through the tree-line, her sword drawn. Seeing that Belle and Mafia were completely unharmed, the tension instantly vanished from her shoulders. Now that she is here, you are both safe. There is a matter I must investigate, so I shall take my leave, Ryu stated flatly. Terrified that the arriving Loki Familia members would recognize her face, Ryu immediately turned and vanished into the depths of the forest. Belle and Mafia watched her go in silent confusion. Those eyes. However, looking at Ryu's face just before she left, Suna had felt a chilling, murderous intent rolling off of her. Shortly after Ace's arrival, the rest of the Loki Familia rushed into the clearing. Finn immediately ordered a perimeter check, and began interrogating Belle and Mafia to determine exactly what had happened. Wait, where did Suna go? Midway through answering Finn's questions, Belle suddenly realized that Suna had completely disappeared. Meanwhile, having slipped away to investigate the anomaly, Ryu tracked her prey. With a ruthless, perfectly aimed strike, Ryu slashed the backs of the two fleeing white-robed figures' knees, dropping them to the ground and cutting off their escape. Now then, I have quite a few questions for you. Were you the ones who released those new monsters? If so, what exactly is your objective here? Looking down at the crippled figures with eyes as cold as absolute zero, Ryu began her brutal interrogation. She had spotted the white-robed duo right before unleashing her magic on the man-eating flowers. Their presence heavily implied that the deep-floor monsters hadn't simply wandered up to the 18th floor by accident, it was a deliberate, orchestrated attack. Suddenly, a small, crimson sphere rolled out from beneath one of the white robes. It was a magic item, a flame stone. Magic items were a broad category of tools imbued with supernatural effects, ranging from everyday conveniences to illegal, highly destructive weapons. The flame stone sitting in front of her was designed to generate a massive, localized explosion of fire. And that suicide gear you're wearing. I recognize it. A horrifying memory from the Dark Age surfaced in Ryu's mind. She remembered the fanatics who strapped flame stones to their own bodies, turning themselves into living bombs to drag their enemies to hell with them. She remembered the monsters who had stolen the lives of her beloved friends. You're survivors of that wretched faction. You're remnants of the Evolus. Ryu's voice was devoid of any emotion, but the sheer, suffocating density of her bloodlust made the two white-robed figures tremble violently in terror. If you refuse to speak, then I will strip the skin from your backs and expose your statuses to the world. And once your identities are laid bare, I will slaughter every last one of you who sides with an evil god. Ryu had once bathed Orario in blood to avenge her fallen familia, executing the Evolus and everyone connected to them until she believed the faction was entirely eradicated. Discovering that the Evolus had survived the purge caused the long-dormant flames of her vengeance to ignite into a roaring inferno. Drawing a vial of status thief from her pouch, Ryu raised her wooden sword high above her head to shatter their defenses and strip them bare. Don't do it. Ignoring their pathetic pleas for mercy, Ryu swung her blade down with merciless, lethal intent. That's enough. But Ryu's blade never reached its target. Stopping the weapon just inches from the white-robed figure's skulls, Suna stood firmly between them, gripping the tip of her wooden sword with his bare hand. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 56, Chapter 56, Sky vs. Masked Figure 1805 words. Want to read ahead? Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 56, Sky vs. Masked Figure. Suna blocked Ryu, who was intent on taking her revenge on the Evolus. What are you doing here? The look in your eyes when you walked away bothered me. When they defeated the man-eating flower and the immediate threat was gone, Suna's hyper-intuition had seen right through her. He knew she was still harboring a fierce, naked killing intent. Let me go. The Evolus are right in front of us. Then I definitely can't let you go. If I do, you'll just start down the path of revenge against them all over again. Suna knew that if Rio realized the Evelus, the very people who had robbed her of her precious friends, were still alive, she would isolate herself and stain her hands with blood once more to avenge them. Lower your sword, Rio. What could you possibly understand? Standing before her hated enemy, Rio was completely incapable of remaining calm. She lashed out, throwing a vicious front kick right at Suna. He simply released his grip on her wooden sword and leapt back, smoothly evading the strike. It's true, I don't understand your pain. But your fallen friends would want your happiness over revenge. Aren't you the one who knows that best? At Suna's words, the faces of her deceased comrades flashed through her mind. Rio's body froze, locking up as if she had been paralyzed. And if you run down that path of vengeance, their hatred won't just be aimed at you. It'll be directed at the people you care about now. If that happens, what will become of Seer? That's. The image of Seer flooded her mind, the girl who had saved her life, the girl who had gently taken her blood-stained hands. Her rationality began to return, and she hung her head. Meanwhile, taking advantage of the opening, the white-robed figures forced their agonizingly injured legs to move. Crawling on all fours, they desperately attempted to flee. Then, it happened. Suna suddenly dashed toward Rio and tackled her to the ground. Unable to react to the abrupt movement, she collapsed hard against the earth. Pinned flat on her back, she looked up. Suna's hands were planted on either side of her head, his face hovering mere inches from her own. Realizing she had just been forcefully pinned down, Rio's face erupted in a bright blush. But she instantly understood the reason why. Embedded in the dirt just ahead of them was a knife, its hilt firmly caught in Suna's right hand. Suna snapped his gaze toward the direction the blade had flown from. Who is that? Rio followed his line of sight. Perched on a thick tree branch, staring down at them, was a mysterious figure completely cloaked in a dark purple robe. Rio was stunned by the sudden arrival, but the crawling white-robed men let out sighs of profound relief. Their relief was short-lived. The masked figure mercilessly hurled throwing knives straight into the back of their heads. The white-robed men went completely still, blood pooling around their skulls. Without pausing, the masked figure drew a magic sword from their robes and swept it toward the lifeless bodies. A massive torrent of fire erupted from the blade, igniting the flame stones equipped on the dead men's belts. A chain reaction of violent explosions and roaring flames ensued, instantly reducing the bodies to ash and threatening to swallow Suna and Rio in the blast. The dregs of the Evelus. Incompetent fools who do nothing but drag us down. When the masked figure finally spoke, the voice was thoroughly distorted, impossible to tell if it belonged to a man or a woman. Having silenced both friend and foe, the figure turned to leave. You'd go that far just to silence them? The masked figure whipped around in a panic. Hovering in the air, carrying Rio securely in a princess carry, was Suna. Please put me down, mister. Despite facing a member of the despised Evelus, Rio's mind was completely short-circuiting. Her face was burning red, entirely flustered by the current predicament. Gururu. Guju. Suna summoned Natsu from his ring. The flame on Suna's forehead and the fiery mane of his lion cub flared, shifting colors. Natsu unleashed a mighty roar over the burning earth. Powered by the tranquility characteristic of the rain attribute, the flames vanished in an instant. The once burning ground was transformed into a charred, barren patch of earth littered with massive puddles, a testament to the rain flames, which shared properties similar to actual water. Suna slowly descended to the ground and set Rio down. Cambio forma. At Suna's command, Natsu's form shifted, integrating into Suna's gloves and attaching thrust-emitting thrusters. The flames on his forehead and gloves shifted back to a brilliant orange. I'm taking you in. Blasting his flames backward, Suna launched himself straight at the masked figure in the trees. The masked figure swung the magic sword once more. A blazing inferno swallowed Suna whole, prompting a horrified scream from Rio. To think you would willingly come to your own death. You bastard. Seeing Suna engulfed in flames, Rhea's rage boiled over. She gripped her wooden sword, ready to strike. "You're the foolish one here." Suna's voice echoed from within the inferno. Slowly, the raging fire began to warp, spiraling downward until it was entirely sucked into Tsuna's gloves. 0-point breakthrough, revised. A magic sword is a weapon capable of casting magic. Therefore, it can be absorbed by the 0-point breakthrough, revised. Suna had purposefully charged head-on to bait them into using it. "Sorry, but magic swords don't work on me." Suna surged forward again. Unable to react to Suna's speed, which had been drastically boosted by the absorbed magic, the masked figure took a devastating right straight to the abdomen, their body folding in half with a sickening crunch. The figure tried to counterattack, but Suna had already vanished from their line of sight. A heavy kick smashed into their back, slamming them violently into the ground below. "He's faster than before. Did he absorb my magic and convert it into his own strength? This guy is my absolute worst matchup." Rhea watched in awe at Suna's sudden surge in power, while the masked figure felt a deep, swelling sense of dread toward the young boy. "My magic sword is gone." Having figured out that Suna couldn't move while absorbing energy, the masked figure planned to use the magic sword as a decoy, only to realize their right hand was completely empty. Looking for this? The magic sword was now resting firmly in Suna's right hand. The masked figure couldn't hide their visible shock. He took it then. They realized Suna had snatched the weapon the exact moment he drove that right straight into their stomach. Suddenly, the flames on Suna's forehead and gloves shifted from orange to a brilliant, aggressive red. The magic sword was instantly engulfed in crimson fire, crumbling away into ash. Red was the storm flame. Its characteristic was disintegration. Out of the 7 attributes of the sky, it boasted the highest destructive power. By breaking down the magic sword, Suna permanently disarmed his opponent, while ensuring Rhea wouldn't get caught in any crossfire. "Now you can't use it anymore." Suna's flames shifted once again, transitioning from red to a crackling green. "Don't get cocky." Realizing magic-based attacks were useless, the masked figure switched to close-quarters combat. To create an opening, they threw 2 knives directly at Rhea. Suna fired his thrusters, inserting himself smoothly between Rhea and the blades, catching both knives barehanded. The figure had predicted Suna would move to protect her. Aiming for that exact moment, they activated the hidden metal claws equipped on their gauntlets, lunging forward with their left hand to pierce Suna's exposed flank. Suna simply raised his right leg, catching the descending strike against his shin, and stopping the deadly blow in its tracks. He blocked it. It was shocking enough that Suna had reacted to a perfectly timed blind spot attack, but catching the metal claws head-on was unbelievable. Suna had skillfully controlled his dying will right before impact to minimize the damage. But still, the masked figure stamped down on Suna's left foot to seal his movements, raising their right hand to drive the 5 metal claws straight toward his heart. The metal claws collided directly with the throwing knives. Suna still held knives now coated in crackling green flames. The masked figure's metal gauntlet shattered into pieces, revealing pale, translucent white skin beneath. They couldn't comprehend how a standard throwing knife had just pulverized a reinforced metal gauntlet. The flame Suna was currently using was the lightning flame. Its characteristic was hardening. It was the absolute sturdiest of all 7 sky attributes. When coated over a weapon, it exponentially increased the object's durability, defense, and attack power. Suna had reinforced the frail throwing knives with lightning flames to shatter the gauntlet. A fraction of a second later, an agonizing surge of pain and numbness violently coursed through the masked figure's entire body. Just like actual electricity, the lightning flame could electrocute its targets. Because the gauntlet was a metal attribute weapon, the moment it shattered, the electrical charge surged directly into the figure's body. Suna immediately launched into a backflip, catching the masked figure squarely under the jaw with his foot. The somersault kick launched them high into the air. Suna's flames shifted a final time, turning from green to a deep, radiant purple. He crossed his arms, firing his thrusters downward to anchor his footing, and aimed both palms at the airborne enemy. Two distinct bullets of flame shot out. Judging it impossible to dodge midair, the masked figure crossed their arms over their face and curled into a tight defensive ball, bracing for impact to minimize the damage. Machine gun. The two incoming flame bullets abruptly multiplied countlessly. The masked figure's eyes widened in sheer panic, completely unprepared for the sudden barrage. Suna's current attribute was the cloud flame. Its characteristic was propagation. It allowed for the rapid, exponential multiplication of anything it touched. Suna had multiplied the initial flame bullets, turning a simple double shot into a devastating spread of heavy artillery. The figure was completely helpless as the relentless swarm of purple flames scored countless direct hits. What the? But the masked figure did not emerge from the explosion, and only a scorched mask and an empty cloak fluttered down to the ground. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 57, Chapter 57, Awareness, Conscientia, 12-13 words. Want to read ahead? Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 57, Awareness, Conscientia. Though Suna had cornered the masked figure, they had vanished without a trace, leaving only their mask and cloak discarded on the dirt. What's going on? Their presence is completely gone. Suna scanned the surrounding area, straining his senses to pick up any lingering traces, but he felt nothing. He realized the masked figure had genuinely vanished from the battlefield. More importantly, how did they escape? The figure had been kicked high into the air. Believing they couldn't dodge, they took a defensive posture. If they had a way to escape midair, they should have used it to avoid the attack in the first place. Yet, the masked figure didn't use any such method, instead vanishing and leaving only their mask and cloak behind. The discrepancy bothered him. Why hadn't they escaped immediately? And how did they manage it at all? After my last attack hit them, did you see where they went? I didn't see anything. Hoping she might have caught a glimpse of their escape, Suna asked Rio, but she shook her head. A real illusion? Or perhaps spatial teleportation? Suna theorized that the masked figure might have been a physical illusion wearing real gear, or perhaps an ability user capable of warping themselves into a separate pocket dimension. However, without concrete proof, it was nothing more than speculation. Sorry, Rio. If I had managed to capture them, we might have been able to squeeze some information out about the Evolus. There is no need for you to apologize, Mister. I am the one who should be apologizing. Apologizing? You stopped me when I was completely consumed by hatred. Yet, I trampled all over your goodwill. If you hadn't stopped me, I likely would have lost someone precious to me all over again. I am truly sorry. Rio bowed her head deeply, her voice heavy with sincere regret. Raise your head, Rio. Ultimately, you were the one who held yourself back. There's no need to apologize. The real problem is that the Evolution organization that was supposedly wiped out have reappeared. Suna tucked the throwing knives under his arm, and bent down to pick up the abandoned mask and cloak. Do you have any idea who that might have been? None at all. Then maybe I should ask Finn. Are you acquainted with a Braver? He's the one who told me about the Dark Age. Don't worry. I won't mention anything about you being involved. Thank you. Since Finn had lived through the Dark Age, there was a chance he might recognize the masked figure. Even if he didn't, Finn wouldn't just ignore the resurgence of the Evolus. Suna figured Finn would at least investigate the matter for them. Rio voiced her gratitude for his discretion. As she did, a soft flush crept up her cheeks, and she slightly averted her gaze. By the way, Mr. Sawada. What is it? About earlier. When you protected me from the masked person. The memory rushed back to her with vivid clarity. The moment he had tackled her to the ground to shield her from the blind spot knife. The moment he had effortlessly scooped her up into a princess carry to save her from the explosion. What's wrong? Did something happen? Never mind, it's nothing at all. Oh, all right. Anyway, I'm heading back to the others. I doubt the Evolus will attack again, but keep your guard up. With that, Suna turned and headed back to where Finn and the others were gathered to hand over the evidence. Suna made his way back to the area where the man-eating flower had spawned to show them the masked figure's belongings. One of the Loki Familia members spotted him approaching. He's back. Finally back, are we? The moment Finn laid eyes on the cloak and mask in Suna's hands, the color drained from his face. He rushed over to Suna immediately. Why do you have those? It was incredibly rare for Finn to raise his voice. Hearing the panic in his tone, Riveria quickly approached them. What's wrong? What happened? Look at this. This is... Just like Finn, Riveria's expression hardened the second she recognized the items. When that monster appeared earlier, I felt like someone was watching us. I went to investigate and found two guys in white robes, but they were taken out by the person wearing this cloak and mask. I was almost silenced too, but I managed to fight them off, or so I thought. I'm not sure what trick they used, but they vanished, leaving only this behind. Suna briefly explained the encounter. Finn and Riveria fell completely silent, lost in deep thought. They were seriously creeping me out. I brought this back thinking you might know something, and judging by your reactions, I'm guessing you do. Yes, I do. In fact, you could say we've been tracking that exact individual. Are you sure about this? Whatever the circumstances, he has already made contact with them. He has a right to know. If he really fought them head-on, he'll likely be targeted too. And if we're going to stand against them, we'll need his strength. So it really is the Evolus. Listening to their exchange, Suna deduced that their enemy was indeed the Evolus, and that the Loki Familia had been actively hunting them down. However, discussing this here isn't a good idea. Let's talk properly once we return to the surface. Will that be all right with you? Meanwhile, at that exact moment. What is this? Standing on a thick tree branch, Rio inspected a strange, red spherical object in her hand. It had an eyeball-like object embedded into it, and had the letter D meticulously engraved into it. She had found it a short distance away from where Tsuna and the masked figure had fought. Realizing it wasn't just an ordinary tool, she had decided to take it with her. However, she had absolutely no idea what its actual purpose was. I suppose I'll look into it once I return. Slipping the strange sphere into her pocket, she began to walk. But still, who exactly is Mr. Witnessing Tsuna's overwhelming strength firsthand, had made one thing abundantly clear. He was absolutely not a rookie adventurer who had just arrived in Orario. She had suspected he was extraordinary ever since she saw his hyper-dying will mode, but his combat abilities far exceeded anything she had imagined. Her curiosity about his true identity was growing by the minute. My cheeks are burning, and my heart won't stop pounding. The moment her thoughts drifted back to Tsuna, Ryu placed a hand over her chest, tightly gripping her shirt. She suddenly realized the strange anomaly occurring within her own body. Sawada simply saved my life. That's all it was. Shaking her head frantically, Ryu desperately tried to deny the unfamiliar emotions swirling inside her. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 58, Chapter 58, Return 1246 words. Want to read ahead? Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 58, Return the day after the battle with the masked figure. The members taken down by the poison worm's toxins were completely healed, and the time had come to return to the surface. Sorry, Tsunayoshi. To end up asking something like this of you. I don't mind at all. But are you sure it's okay for me to head back alone? It was early morning. Suna was currently the only one fully prepped and ready to depart. Hestia had originally issued the rescue quest through Ina because Belle had gone missing. Consequently, Ina was still completely in the dark about their safety, and was likely sick with worry. When the topic of Ina's concern was brought up, Finn suggested that Suna, being more than capable, should return alone to deliver the news as quickly as possible. With Finn's endorsement, everyone agreed that having Suna go ahead as a messenger was the most efficient plan. It'll be fine. We have the Loki Familia, and a very reliable helper with us, after all. Since this expedition was a massive joint operation between the Loki and Hephaestus Familius, they had split into two groups upon entering the dungeon, agreeing to rendezvous on the 18th floor. Now, they were doing the reverse, splitting into an advance and a rear guard to head back up. Belle and the others were scheduled to travel with the rear guard. All right, I'll see you on the surface. See you later. Suna said his goodbyes to Hestia, and made his way toward the entrance leading out of the 18th floor. Sawada Tsunayoshi. Just as he neared the tunnel, Finn approached him holding a single sheet of parchment. I thought I should give this to you. What's this? A map detailing the route from the 18th floor back to the surface. You might not need it, but it doesn't hurt to have. Also, be careful. There's a floor boss named Goliath waiting just beyond this entrance. Though, I assume you'll be fine. Lastly, I still need to hand over your reward for this expedition. Would you mind visiting our home base at a later date? I'd like to discuss that masked figure with you then. I'll send a formal letter to your familia. Understood. If Tsuna exchanged his deep floor drop items at the guild's exchange counter, it would immediately expose the fact that he had ventured into the deep floors. To avoid that, Finn decided to personally hand over the reward, and use the opportunity to invite Suna to the Loki Familia to discuss the Evolus. I'll see you later. Having relayed his message, Finn turned and headed back to the campsite. Once Finn was out of sight, Suna ignited his hyper-dying will mode and shot toward the surface. In hyper-dying will mode, Suna entered the connecting passageway leading to the 17th floor. Oh. The moment he stepped into the massive room, a colossal, ash-brown humanoid monster standing over 7 meters tall unleashed a deafening roar. So this is Goliath. The sheer force of Goliath's roar shook the atmosphere inside the room, but Suna stared up at the giant without a shred of hesitation. Goliath crouched low and lunged, smashing its massive fists into the ground and obliterating the terrain as it charged straight at Suna. Suna was immediately swallowed up by a violent storm of catastrophic punches. However, Goliath realized it hadn't felt the impact of crushing a human body. It ceased its rampage, scanning the area for the boy who had suddenly vanished. Oh. Frustrated by its inability to find its prey, Goliath began blindly hammering the ground around it in a fit of rage. Its relentless strikes cratered the floor, sending deafening shockwaves and tremors echoing throughout the 17th floor. So this is a floor boss. While the giant mindlessly destroyed the room, Suna hovered quietly near the ceiling behind it, calmly analyzing its strength. In that case, having formulated a plan, the flame on Suna's forehead shifted from orange to yellow. Goliath finally sensed his presence and whirled around. Impact, Suna fired his thrusters, closing the distance in the blink of an eye. Hovering right in front of Goliath's chest, his right hand flared with the sun flame. He drove a heavy palm strike directly into the giant's sternum. However, the strike didn't leave a single scratch on Goliath's tough exterior. Despite taking 0 external damage, Goliath suddenly gasped in agony. It swayed on its feet before slowly toppling forward, crashing face-first into the rubble. A moment later, its massive body burst into ash and disappeared completely. I guess that was a bit reckless. Suna winced, feeling a sharp ache in his right arm. A palm strike is a technique that uses kinetic shock to bypass outer defenses and damage the internal organs. Boosted by the sun flame's activation characteristic, the kinetic force of the palm strike had traveled straight through Goliath's body, cleanly shattering the magic stone hidden deep within. However, rapidly enhancing his arm's muscle fibers with the sun flame even for just a split second carried a heavy recoil, proving that even Suna couldn't use such an extreme physical buff without a physical toll. 20 minutes after defeating Goliath, Suna finally reached the surface. The surface. Stepping out of the dungeon, Suna immediately threw his arm over his eyes to block the blinding sunlight. He had been trapped in the sunless underground for so long that the natural light felt overwhelming. I really made it back. While immersed in those memories, the reality of being back above ground set in, and the events that had happened during the expedition flashed through his mind in rapid succession. I need to go to the guild. Shaking himself out of his daze, Suna remembered his primary objective, checking in with Aina to relieve her anxiety about Belle. He headed to the guild. The moment he entered the guild, Suna headed straight for Aina's counter and delivered the news of Belle's safety. Hearing Suna's report, all the tension drained from Aina's body as she let out a massive sigh of profound relief. After finishing his report, Suna took advantage of the shower facilities located inside Babel before leaving the guild. He was currently walking through the city streets, stretching his arms over his head as he made his way back to their home base at the abandoned church. Sorry about that. Navigating the bustling crowd, his shoulder accidentally bumped into someone else's. Suna immediately apologized. Likewise. Wait, you're... The person he had bumped into was a long-haired, black-haired elf. The moment the elf saw Suna's face, their expression changed drastically. Suna looked back in pure confusion. Sorry. I mistook you for someone else. With a deeply apologetic expression, the elf apologized and vanished into the dense crowd. What was that about? Suna felt a strange sense of dissonance regarding the elf's bizarre reaction, but ultimately brushed it off, assuming they had simply confused him with an acquaintance. He continued his walk back to the church. But Suna did not know. He didn't know that a sinister threat was rapidly closing in on Belle and the others who had remained in the dungeon. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 59, Chapter 59, Unrest, Sinister. 1727 words. Want to read ahead? Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations. Currently, there are 155 chapters of this book on my Patreon. Chapter 59, Unrest, Sinister. A week had passed since the expedition ended and they returned to the surface. I'm home, Tsunayoshi. A member of the Loki Familia asked me to give this to you. Hestia had just returned from her part-time job. She handed Suna a sealed letter that a Loki Familia member had intercepted her with. Suna opened it and scanned the contents. It detailed the specific date and time for their upcoming meeting. What does it say? Remember how Finn said he wanted to give me the reward for the expedition and discuss something important at the Loki Familia's home? This is the date and time. It also includes an apology for taking so long to reach out, saying they had a lot to deal with. More importantly, are you sure you didn't want to go to the celebration party, Tsunayoshi? Belle and the others were not at the church, they were currently out celebrating wealth. After Tsuna had returned to the surface alone, the rest of the group had been caught up in a massive irregular event in the dungeon. During that chaos, Welf had successfully leveled up to LV. Upon ranking up, he acquired the development ability Blacksmith, officially becoming a High Smith. Belle had organized a party to celebrate the massive milestone. I wasn't with them when it happened, so it felt a bit out of place. Plus, I thought I might get called over by the Loki Familia today. Well, if you're fine with it, I won't press the issue. Setting that aside, are you okay, Hestia? You got caught sneaking into the dungeon. Didn't the guild give you a severe warning and fine you heavily? Well, yes. But since our familia is basically broke, the amount they took wasn't actually that devastating. Hermes's familia, on the other hand, is a mid-tier faction. They got slapped with such a monstrous fine that Hermes is still staring blankly at a wall. Alright. Suna felt a twinge of pity. She had kept her entry into the dungeon a secret just as Hermes instructed, but they had been found out anyway, making his discretion entirely pointless. Speaking of which, Bell ranked up too, right? And by ranking up, he was officially granted the alias Little Rookie. Not only that, he managed to rank up in just a month and a half. He's officially the fastest record holder in history. Fastest in history, huh? Bell really is amazing. Though the actual record holder is you, Tsunayoshi. All of Orario firmly believed that Bell Cranel held the record for the fastest level up. However, Hestia was the only one who knew the absolute truth. The true record belonged to Tsuna. The requirements for a rank up were reaching a specific threshold of basic abilities, and accomplishing a great feat worthy of the gods' recognition. Since arriving in Orario, Tsuna had fought back-to-back battles against first-tier adventurers like Ace, Finn, Alan, and the Gulliver brothers, and had continuously slaughtered powerful monsters during the recent expedition. Thanks to his unique fauna skill, his growth rate was unmatched, and he had already achieved several absurd great feats. By all standard rules, Tsuna was more than qualified to rank up. However, under Arenas' strict orders, Tsuna was forbidden from leveling up. If that gag order didn't exist, Tsuna would have been universally recognized as the fastest-growing adventurer in the world. Well, it's not like I can tell anyone, even without Arenas' gag order. Bell leveling up in a month and a half had drawn the intense scrutiny of countless gods and adventurers. Tsuna had met the requirements in less than a single month. If anyone found out that a vastly superior version of Bell existed right beside him, the ensuing chaos would be catastrophic. Hestia's lips were tightly sealed. Then, it happened. Lady Hestia. Lily's frantic voice echoed through the church. A moment later, Bell and Welf stumbled into Hestia's line of sight, both covered in nasty bruises and minor cuts. We'll explain later. Healing comes first. Your head is on fire. Tsuna had instantly ignited into his hyper-dying will mode without putting on his gloves. Welf, seeing this state for the first time, stared in utter shock. It's fine. This is my power. I'm going to use my flames to heal you, so hold still. There's no need to go that far. Assuming Tsuna intended to literally cauterize their wounds with fire, Welf panicked. Since their injuries weren't life-threatening, burning them shut seemed wildly excessive. He threw his hands up, shaking his head frantically in refusal. It's okay, Welf. Tsuna has healed my injuries before. It doesn't feel hot at all. If you say so. Trusting Bell's word, Welf reluctantly agreed to let Tsuna treat them. Both boys slumped down onto the sofa. Here I go. Tsuna placed a hand on each of their heads. The flame on his forehead shifted from orange to yellow, and the two boys were enveloped in the gentle glow of the sun flame. My wounds are. They're closing. The activation characteristic of the sun flame stimulated their healing abilities, closing their cuts and fading their bruises in seconds. Seeing the supernatural healing firsthand, Welf and Lily were absolutely stunned. So what exactly happened? I thought you were at a celebration party today, not the dungeon. Reverting from his hyper state back to normal, Tsuna asked for an explanation. There were some people at the tavern badmouthing the gods. We ended up getting into a brawl with them and the rest of their familia. Bell held it in. I was the one who threw the first punch. It's my fault Bell got hurt. Please, don't be mad at him. Looking deeply ashamed, Bell explained the incident. Welf immediately bowed his head, attempting to take the full blame and protect Bell. I understand what happened. I'm not going to punish you, so please raise your heads. Lady Hestia. I'm happy that you got angry on my behalf, Bell. But fighting in the streets is still a no-go. Those people were insulting you. Bell could tolerate being mocked himself, but hearing Hestia being ridiculed was something he simply couldn't forgive. He couldn't easily accept her reprimand. I know how you feel, Belle. If the roles were reversed, I'd be breathing fire too. But think about it. If I went out and got into a brawl, and came home beaten black and blue, how would you feel? I'd want to cry. And I feel the same way. Tsunayoshi does too. At Hestia's gentle words, Belle snapped back to reality, and looked over at Tsuna. Seeing the deep worry etched onto Tsuna's face, Belle finally realized the gravity of his foolishness. And because you got hurt, Tsunayoshi had to use his power to heal you. Do you understand what that means? I'll control myself next time. I'm sorry. Even if they had been provoked, their reckless actions had caused Tsuna emotional distress, and forced him to use his abilities. Crushed by a wave of guilt, Belle apologized. Though he remained silent, Welf looked equally remorseful. However, the opposing faction's reaction is what worries me. I just pray they don't hold a grudge and try to retaliate against Sir Belle and the others. Glad that Belle was unharmed, Lily nonetheless voiced her concern that the opposing familia might seek petty revenge. I threw the first punch. They shouldn't have any reason to target Belle. That may be true in theory, but highly prideful adventurers, especially familias that obsess over saving face, won't let this go easily. This could turn into a massive headache. That's true. Agreeing with Lily's assessment, Hestia crossed her arms, pondering how to prevent any further escalation. Are you sure this was just a random bar fight? While Hestia and the others were brainstorming ways to avoid a grudge, Tsuna alone voiced a far more chilling suspicion. Having never considered the possibility of a setup, the other three looked at him in surprise. I don't have any concrete proof, but I can't shake the feeling this was a trap. Now that you mention it, it doesn't seem entirely impossible. Hearing Tsuna's logic, Lily realized the possibility. The enemy could have deliberately provoked them into throwing the first punch to fabricate a justifiable reason to pick a fight with their familia. Still, for Sir Tsuna to suggest such a dark theory. No. I was just remembering a time when I was set up and framed as the bad guy, and it felt somewhat similar. Just what kind of life have you been living? Coming from the usually soft-hearted and optimistic Tsuna, saying such a thing was so wildly unexpected that Lily and Welf were left speechless. Tsuna was speaking from personal trauma. Back in his world, he had been cornered by Xanxus, the ruthless boss of the Vongola's elite assassination squad, the Varia. The current situation felt eerily similar to Xanxus's manipulative tactics. Years ago, Xanxus had orchestrated the largest coup d'état in Vongola history, an event known as the Cradle. Though the coup failed, the incident was heavily classified. Only the Vongola's highest-ranking executives and the absolute elite who fought in the battle knew the truth. However, when Xanxus returned to the public stage during the Ring conflict to determine the next Vongola boss, he needed to silence anyone who knew about the Cradle. He manipulated Tsuna into fighting the ninth boss, framing Tsuna as a traitorous villain. By doing so, Xanxus aimed to win the loyalty of the allied Mafia families, eliminate those who knew his past treason, and establish a completely dictatorial regime. After hearing the description of the opposing familia, Hestia decided to proactively seek out their patron god and settle the matter peacefully before it could escalate any further. However, no one could have predicted that Tsuna's dark suspicion would be proven right in the absolute worst way imaginable. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations. Currently, there are 155 chapters of this book on my Patreon. Chapter 60, Turmoil, Tubament, 15-20 words. Want to read ahead? Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations. Chapter 60, Turmoil, Tubament, the day after the brawl at the tavern. I wonder if Ryu is around. It was shortly before evening. Tsuna was currently making his way toward the hostess of fertility. Earlier that day, Belle had received a formal invitation to a banquet of the gods, an exclusive gala hosted by the deities from the Apollo familia. The attendance requirements mandated that the patron deity attend with exactly one Familia member. Because the Apollo Familia was the faction they fought at the pub yesterday, Hestia and Belle attended the banquet to formally speak with their deity, leaving Tsuna behind to watch the church. Having not seen Ryo since they parted ways in the dungeon, Tsuna had decided to check in on her and grab dinner at the pub while he was at it. After a 15-minute walk, he arrived at the hostess of fertility. Standing outside the entrance, sweeping the front step, was a short-haired human woman wearing the tavern's signature uniform. "Excuse me. Are you a customer?" When Tsuna called out, the woman paused her sweeping and looked over. This was Lunwar Faust, one of the pub's waitresses. At first glance, she looked like a perfectly normal woman, but she was notoriously rough around the edges, known for mercilessly physically tossing out unruly patrons. Despite her violent tendencies, she was one of the more sensible employees, often playing the exhausted straightman to Anya and Chloe's endless antics. "Is Ryo working today? Do you know Ryo?" The moment he asked for Ryo, Lunwar's eyes narrowed into a sharp, threatening glare. "We just sort of ran into each other in the dungeon recently, and she really helped out a friend of mine, so I wanted to say hi." Realizing Tsuna wasn't a threat, Lunwar instantly dropped her guard and relaxed. "Sorry about that. I thought you might be one of the guys holding a grudge against her." "Gee, grudge? Our pub caters specifically to adventurers, right? Which means we get a lot of hot-headed idiots. Sometimes when they start trashing the place, we have to beat the crap out of M and throw M out. I thought you might be a sore loser coming back for revenge." She just said beat the crap out of them with a straight face. Lunwar's casual admission of extreme violence sent a shiver down Tsuna's spine. "Ryo's around, yeah. But she's been acting really weird lately. Is she sick or something?" "Not sick, exactly. It's just, ever since she got back from the dungeon, she's been tripping over nothing, spacing out constantly, and washing the same plate over and over again." "Did something happen to her?" Hearing Lunwar's report, Tsuna wondered if Ryo had been affected by their battle, remaining completely and utterly oblivious to the actual cause. "Ah, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Lunwar Faust. Nice to meet ya. I'm Sawada Tsunayoshi. You can just call me Tsuna." The moment she heard his name, Lunwar dropped her broom in pure shock. "Why, you're him. Is it true you can eat Seer's cooking and survive?" "I wouldn't say I'm completely fine, but it's not like it's completely inedible." "No way. Even people with the abnormal resistance development ability get wiped out by her food." "Development ability?" Hearing an unfamiliar term, Tsuna tilted his head in confusion. Development abilities are specialized skills you can acquire when you level up. They vary from person to person. Abnormal resistance, like the name implies, gives you resistance to poisons and other status ailments. Though the level of tolerance depends on the person. "Ah, I see. I'm only level 1, so I don't have any of those development abilities. Even high-level adventurers with abnormal resistance drop dead from Seer's cooking. How the hell are you surviving it?" "I have an acquaintance back home, who has a terrifying talent for turning any meal she cooks into pure poison. Compared to her, Seer's food is actually somewhat manageable." "What kind of cursed talent is that?" Lunwar couldn't help but shout a retort at the thought of someone possessing a culinary talent so lethal it made Seer's cooking look tame. "How much longer are you gonna take sweeping the dirt, Lunwar? Get back to work." The pub's doors swung open, and a middle-aged dwarven woman with earthy brown hair tied back in a bun stepped outside. This was Mia Grand, the owner of the hostess of fertility. She had a fiercely tomboyish, fearless personality, possessing the overwhelming presence of a true boss lady. While she was utterly terrifying when angered, striking fear into the hearts of her employees, she was also deeply compassionate and fiercely protective of her staff, earning their profound respect. "Who are you? Haven't seen your face before." "I came to see Ryo and to grab some dinner." "Is that so?" The owner of the hostess of fertility. Mia hooked a thumb at her own chest, introducing herself with a booming voice. I'll tell you this right now. This is my pub. In here, I am the law. I don't care if you're a human, or a god, anyone who causes trouble in my place gets no mercy. Understood? Why yes ma'am. Crushed by her overbearing aura, Suna instinctively stood at attention and shouted his compliance. You said you came to see Rio, right? She's out doing some shopping. She should be back soon, so head inside and wait. With that, Mia turned around and headed back inside to resume her duties. This is a pub, right? Mia's intimidating presence was so far beyond that of a normal tavern owner that Suna seriously questioned if he had walked into a military barracks. Mama Mia used to be an adventurer. But she always said that no matter how shitty the era got, she wanted to create a place where people could smile and eat good food. That's why she opened this pub. She's an amazing person. But if you make her mad, she'll literally punch you through a wall, so watch yourself. At best, you get banned. At worst, she legitimately buries you. Berries. Suna was horrified by the word berries, but having just felt Mia's overwhelming aura, he knew Lunwar wasn't exaggerating in the slightest. Meanwhile, at that exact moment. Just what is wrong with me? Rio was currently walking through the city streets, carrying groceries back to the pub. Ever since that day, I can't stop thinking about him. Her cheeks were tinted pink as Suna's face repeatedly flashed through her mind. Lost in thought, wondering why she was so fixated on him, she arrived at the hostess of fertility before she even realized it. Ah, Rio. You've got a visitor. Long time no see, Rio. The very boy she had just been agonizing over suddenly appeared right in front of her. Rio's face instantly flushed crimson. Without a sound, she completely short-circuited. She fell straight backward, slamming the back of her head against the stone pavement. Shocked by her sudden collapse, Suna and Lunwar immediately rushed to her side. Are you okay? Stay away from me. Suna crouched down and leaned in close to check on her. The second Suna's face entered her field of vision, Rio reflexively threw a devastating uppercut. Her fist connected cleanly with Suna's jaw, launching him into the air before he crashed unceremoniously onto the floor. It hurts. Why you've got to be kidding me. Suna scrambled right back up, clutching his jaw and groaning in pain. Lunwar stared in absolute disbelief. She couldn't comprehend how Suna was still conscious after taking a direct hit from Rio. During her days as a bounty hunter, Lunwar was known by the alias Black Fist, a level 4 adventurer. After the Dark Age, she had fought Rio firsthand. Having worked alongside her for years, Lunwar knew exactly how monstrous Rio's strength was. Even if she wasn't serious, a level 1 adventurer should have had their jaw shattered and been knocked out cold from an attack like that. However, because Suna lived his life constantly brushing shoulders with death thanks to reborn Spartan tutoring, his body had become significantly sturdier than a normal human's. Rio's uppercut was painful, but it wasn't enough to put him down. What did I just do? Snapping back to reality, Rio scrambled to her feet, horrified by her own actions. You just sent that poor kid flying. Don't tell me you don't remember. I did that. Who else is standing here? More importantly, how do you not remember? I remember seeing Mr. Sawada's face right in front of me, but my memory cuts out right after that. Don't tell me. Hearing Rio's panicked explanation, the pieces finally clicked together in Lunwar's head. She slowly turned her gaze toward Suna. Could the reason Rio's been acting so weird be? Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 61, Chapter 61, Sage, Sapiens, 1719 words. Want to read ahead? Join my Patreon for just $7 to get early access to all upcoming chapters. Patreon.com/negative translations Chapter 61, Sage, Sapiens, Suna had just taken Ria's uppercut. I am so terribly sorry. It's fine, really. But why won't you look at me? Ria was offering her sincere apologies to Tsuna, who had entered the pub and sat down on a stool. However, her body was completely turned around, her face pointed toward the back of the room. Are you still worried about what happened earlier? That's not it. How dense can you be? Lunmar retorted to Tsuna's sheer obliviousness, clutching her head in exasperation as Tsuna assumed Ryu was simply feeling awkward about accidentally punching him. I leave the rest to you. I have things I must attend to. Still refusing to meet Tsuna's eyes, Ryu briskly walked off toward the kitchen. She really didn't need to worry about it, though. This is going to be a disaster. Between Tsuna, who was impossibly dense, and Ryu, who was so hyperconscious of him that she couldn't even hold a normal conversation, Lunmar was absolutely certain that any progress in their relationship was going to be an uphill battle. Having finished his meal at the Hostess of Fertility, Tsuna ended up leaving the pub without getting to properly speak with Ryu. I didn't get to talk to her at all. He had tried to start a conversation a few times, but Ryu had actively avoided him, making it impossible. With no other plans for the evening, Tsuna decided to head back to the church and watch the home base. Sawada Tsunayoshi. Suddenly, a voice called out his name. Tsuna turned toward the sound and saw a mysterious figure completely shrouded in a black robe standing in a dark alleyway. Is that the person from before? But they don't have a mask. Are they a comrade of theirs? Seeing the full-body cloak instantly reminded Tsuna of the masked figure from the 18th floor. He immediately went on high alert. It is only natural that you would be on guard when a suspicious person appears out of nowhere, but please calm yourself. I am a messenger sent by Auranas. From Lord Auranas. My name is Fels. I have come on Auranas' orders to bring you to him. He has told me everything about you, including the fact that you came from another world. So he really is. The only ones who knew he was from another world were Hestia, Bel, and Auranas. Realizing this person was genuinely Auranas' messenger, Tsuna dropped his guard. I apologize for the suddenness, but I need you to come with me. Auranas wishes to speak with you. Understood. Follow me. The guild is that way, isn't it? There is another entrance. While a god might be fine, it would be highly suspicious for a human like you to repeatedly visit Auranas' altar through the guild. Furthermore, it would be problematic if my existence were made known. Therefore, I ask that you keep my identity a secret from others. Guided by Fels, Tsuna made his way toward the secret entrance leading to Auranas' altar. I didn't know there was an entrance here. They descended into the underground passage, walking down a narrow, dimly lit corridor. Hardly anyone knows this secret path exists. And the number of people who have actually used it can be counted on one hand. Does that mean it's a closely guarded secret? Is it really okay for me to be down here? Using this path is the only way to ensure neither your identity nor mine is compromised. It is the most optimal choice. Chatting quietly with Fels, Tsuna eventually arrived at the underground chamber. We're here. Just as Fels announced, they stepped into the very same altar room Tsuna had visited once before. Good work, Fels. And thank you for coming despite the sudden summons, Sawada Tsunayoshi. What did you want to talk about, Lord Auranas? A progress report. Regarding the clues to returning you to your world. Did you find something? Fels and I have looked into it, but the reality is that we haven't found a single lead. Fels and I searched desperately during Jato's time as well, but we never figured out how he managed to return to his world. Truthfully, finding a clue will prove to be exceedingly difficult. Fels knows about Jato too. Tsuna couldn't hide his shock. He hadn't expected anyone other than Auranas to know about Jato. Wait, does that mean Fels is a god too? Or maybe an elf? In this world, the only beings capable of living for hundreds of years were gods and elves. Tsuna naturally assumed Fels belonged to one of those two races. Incorrect. I am human. Or rather, a former human, I suppose. Denying Suna's assumption, Fels gripped the edge of the hood with both hands and pulled it back, revealing its true face. The moment Suna saw Fels's face, he let out a pathetic shriek and collapsed onto his rear. Staring back at him was a face completely devoid of flesh and skin, a bare, bleached skull. Fels was once the sole sage in the Magic Kingdom who successfully synthesized the Philosopher's Stone, a relic that manifests eternal life. So you're immortal. In a manner of speaking. However, all the flesh and skin on my body rotted away, leaving me as a creature more hideous than a monster. I can no longer feel the pangs of hunger, or the parched ache of thirst. And because I lost my physical vessel, I can no longer update my status. This form is the ultimate fate of one who sought immortality. It's poetic justice, so to speak. You're not very surprised. I know I'm not one to talk, but a normal human would have been far more terrified. Ah, no. It's just, there's someone exactly like you back in my world. Seriously. The sheer shock of learning that another immortal being existed in a different world caused Fels's typically composed tone of voice to completely shatter. The person Suna was referring to was Bermuda von Weckenstein, the man he had fought during the representative Battle of the Rainbow. Bermuda was the leader of the Vindus, the Mafia's underground law enforcement organization that judged those the law could not. He was also a former Arcobaleno. Bermuda had been one of the Arcobaleno sacrificed to protect the world's order. During the generational shift, he was supposed to die when the flames were drained from his pacifier. However, in his final moments, he created the eighth attribute, the Flame of Night. By igniting his pacifier with this new flame, he artificially extended his own life. Since then, he had lived for centuries, driven solely by the singular desire to kill Checkerface, the entity who had cursed him into an infant. Now that I think about it, Bermuda is. Despite living for centuries, Bermuda's body hadn't rotted away. Not only that, he had used his flame of night to save others who shared his hatred for Checkerface, and possessed the resolve to survive, allowing them to live for centuries as well. Suna realized that Bermuda was essentially a vastly superior version of Fels, giving him a renewed appreciation for just how terrifyingly powerful Bermuda truly was. I was indebted to Giotto in the past. Like Auranas, I feel a sense of destiny in meeting you, his descendant. Therefore, I intend to spare no effort in researching a way to return you to your world. I fully intend to, however. Did something happen? The truth is, there is an organization operating in the shadows of Orario. We are currently in a situation where we must investigate their movements. And you, it seems, have already been caught up in their conspiracy. Specifically, during your expedition to the 59th floor with the Loki Familia. How do you know about that? I handed an item to the Sword Princess, through an intermediary to monitor the situation on the 59th floor. I never imagined you would be there, however. No. That was just. Please calm down. I have no intention of punishing you. Isn't that right, Auranas? In fact, allow me to express my gratitude. Instead of being punished for sneaking down to the 59th floor as a level 1, Suna was being thanked. Suna couldn't hide his confusion. If you had not gone to the 59th floor, the Loki Familia would have been annihilated, and Orario might have been set on a path toward total ruin. What do you mean? To cut to the chase. The spirit you fought. It was artificially created. That thing was. A cold shiver ran down Suna's spine at the revelation that such a grotesque abomination was man-made. It is not just the spirit. The caterpillar-like monster that spits corrosive acid, and the man-eating flowers, they were all artificially created. Could it be the evils? So you knew. Also, I fought someone who might be part of the evils. They were wearing a mask and a full-body cloak, hiding their identity just like Fels. We knew such an individual was among the enemy, but to think you had already made contact with them. Hearing Suna's report, Auranas realized that Suna was now squarely in the evil's crosshairs. Sawada Tsunayoshi. Did you go on this expedition of your own free will? Finn asked me if I could lend them my strength. If you made the decision of your own volition, then I shall say nothing, nor will I attempt to stop you. However, there are people waiting for your safe return. Never forget that. This conversation has gone on long enough. Give him the item. Understood. Fels approached Suna and pulled a small, palm-sized crystal from their robe. What is this? This is an oculus. With this, you can communicate over long distances with anyone holding a paired crystal. If anything happens, our Arenas will contact you through this. Conversely, if you ever need to contact our Arenas, please use it. Thank you. Support this fanfic by leaving positive review, comments, and power stones. For advanced chapters, Patreon.com/negative translations. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.